Well, welcome to another episode of Garden Studios Podcast. My name is Paul, I'm your host, and to my right is my beautiful wife, Mattel.
Hey guys.
Guys, today we have a crazy guest. I'm so honored that he's here.
All your guests are crazy.
Well, you're extra crazy.
Extra crazy.
But he is a father, he is a husband, he is a songwriter, he is the creative publishing director of Bethel Music, and he's also the owner of Blackbox Sound Co. And with no further ado, let's put our hands together for Eric Allen.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Eric, thank you so much for swinging by, man.
Stoked to be here. You're crushing it. I love what you're doing.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
So, father and artist, that's really what I wanted to talk about, its origins. Well, why don't we start from the beginning? Where are you from originally? You're not from Redding, right?
No, grew up in Kerrville, Texas. Yep.
Wow.
In the kind of the hill country in between Austin and San Antonio. And I grew up there. My dad was a pastor. Mom played the piano,
Wow.
played the drums in church all my life.
Nice.
Went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night for years. Played sports and did music. Those are my two main passions.
Right.
But yeah, I grew up in the Bible Belt. Grew up in Texas.
That's amazing. So, growing up in Texas, were you songwriting back then?
Yeah, I did. I always kind of, as a kid,
Mm-hmm.
you're dreaming about being a rock star or,
Mm-hmm.
a songwriter or worship leader or something. But those things just weren't as facilitated back when I was a kid,
Right.
I know I look 47, but I'm 48. So when I was a kid, nowadays you can do a full album on your iPhone and have it
100%.
uploaded onto, Spotify in a couple days. So,
Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
but we did, I would break into my dad's church and get on the drums and get my friends over on the amps and play, and we would write songs. And I remember my first band was called One Way. It was the one-way sign, but instead of tilted sideways, it was tilted up toward the Lord.
Wow, I love it.
But yeah, so I loved songwriting since I was a kid, and but more than anything, I think I loved collaborating and just making music. That was what was intoxicating to me, was
Wow.
just getting together in something that didn't exist, and then just putting your effort to try to make something even if it wasn't great, and then
Right.
all of a sudden you have this song. It felt like something was birthed, and that was just always, I was just driven to be in that environment, be around
Wow.
it. So
Yeah. So father and artist, it's a retreat that you started. Did it start out as a retreat?
no, it didn't actually. Yeah, and I guess, gosh, man, there's a lot of context around that. But I was in second year at BSSM in 2011, and Lance Jacobs was my my pastor. And at one point during one of the sessions, he had just mentioned in praying over me in a kind of a group setting that he's like, "Man, I just see you fathering artists," and that phrase just really wrecked me, and
Wow.
kind of it hit me hard. I was like, "Oh man," because at that point I was like, I was a father literally already.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in music and you're in wanting to be cool at some level and relevant, I had my identity intact for the most part, but you still, I was having this journey of wanting to almost kind of distance myself from the father thing, I am a father and I love but I want to be relevant and still, and the Lord in that season really is broke that off me. He's like,
Wow.
"Man, you've had a father heart since you were a little boy,
Oh.
This is just the way I made you,
Right.
So, yeah, I heard him say that, and that kind of had, really resonated with me. And this was after years of already being involved in, some, creative settings like that, But really, years and years ago, I was invited. I got this. I'm not sure if I said this last time that we chatted, but I got an invitation in the mail, and it was this literal snail mail with kind of one of those wax stamp.
Yeah.
Did I tell you that already?
No, I don't think so.
And it had a logo and everything. Singers, Songwriters, and Poets Retreat. And a buddy of mine had sent it to me and had invited 20 other guys that were all creative, that we were kind of all bros, and it was this invitation to come out to his ranch and break up into groups, songwrite, and then at the end of the weekend, he had a huge barn, so inviting friends, family, all to come out there
Wow.
and perform the songs. So that was kind of the idea. But when we went out there, the rails just came off, and like no one stayed committed. They hit that resistance
Right.
and just kind of quit, and it turned into just like having a beer and fly fishing and like
Yeah.
you know, doing fires and stuff. So it was awesome, but I was disappointed, man. I brought my gear, I brought my drums, I brought my guitars, I brought my anything I could to record stuff, and that marked me because I was really looking forward to, you know, actually creating something.
Yeah.
So that model though stuck out to me, like going away somewhere, being intentional, you know, breaking up into groups and having a goal in mind. So, but to answer your question, Following Artists started, you know, I was a pastor in BSSM second year, and I knew I was going to need to probably teach an AMT at some point. So I started a mock AMT in my first year before I was actually officially teaching any courses, and just did it in Mod 5 during BSSM, and invited anybody in my revival group that wanted to come.
Wow.
And it was just kind of any creative, whether you were a lyricist, a poet, a rapper, a dancer. It was kind of all modalities of creativity.
Right.
And that's the way it started. And then out of that, created an offshoot of going up to Medford the first few years.
Oh.
And then brought it back to the Summit in Reading after that. So we've been doing it for 10 years.
Right. Wow, that's incredible. So 10 years of, you know, fathering artists and, you know, getting to know different writers, different even other mediums of art, dancers. What's been, from your observation, what's been the number one opposition for creatives as far as actually doing it?
You know, I saw this little reel of Prince yesterday, and I'm going to probably botch it, but paraphrasing, he was like, you know, when art is legitimized as soon as you create it, and it's beautiful. You don't need anyone to celebrate it to make it legitimate, you know, but so often you want to share your art, and as soon as you do that, and then the critics come and they begin to measure your creativity and measure your art. And so I think it's the risk to actually create something that could be ridiculed, you know. And the identity and comparison, and I'm not good enough, or I'm instead of just focusing on like, man, I've been given a desire, you know, and I'm going to invest in it. I'm going to plant the seed and bear whatever fruit I can right now in this season. So I think having enough life experience and enough encouragement around you to just go, hey, just do it. You know, yeah, you need to get better. Yeah, you can hone your craft. Sure, you can invest time, and the people who do that do get better. It's like, you know, 2 + 2 is 4. You're gonna, if you put the work in, you'll get better. But I think that's what I've seen is, just it's such a tender thing to create, and then, you know, that not being enough for the creative because they do want to share it. Right. And then when the ridicule comes, I think that's what I've seen has been the hardest thing.
Wow. Man, yeah, no, for sure. I could totally relate with that. It's almost like, I mean, when I went to Father Artist, it was super impactful. I remember Antonio talking about co-writing, and he said, it's hard, but you can't treat your songs like your baby. You know what I mean? You kind of have to somehow disconnect that in order to collaborate with other people.
Totally.
Yeah. And I remember in Fathering Artist, one of the biggest things that impacted me was during the first day was the Q&A. You guys were all lined up, and I asked, how do you find your sound? And to be honest, so JP grabs the mic, and he goes, dude, you're asking the wrong question. And I felt so dumb. I'm like, dang it, I'm trying to make a good impression. And he said my question was stupid. And Antonio chimes in, he was like, yeah, bro, you'll never find it. I'm like, dang it. What did I ask this? And then, but then JP starts talking again. He starts talking about how your sound is something you can never find because you're constantly changing, and how when you actually going after your sound is like asking for all of it now. So can you talk to us about your process in this songwriting? Is it something that do you find yourself focusing on the product, or do you find yourself focusing on the process.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important what's in your goal spot. And too many times what people put in their goal spot is the byproduct or fruit of someone else or something else. So they'll see someone shine, or they'll see someone create something beautiful, or,
Right.
you know, and then, you know, the guy that was in his room and just, he was free, right? And he was just doing something, and he put a certain filter on the drums, and he just like did it. Maybe he didn't even think about it, but he's like, I think it sounds good. I like it. Boom. Now everyone sees that fruit of his choice, because now they hear it on Spotify or somewhere, and they're like, oh, and everyone starts talking about how cool that drum sounded.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, why? Now that becomes their goal. Like, okay, on this song, I'm going to try to create that. So I think, like, finding an atmosphere, getting into a state of mind where you press past the anxiety and the fear and get to that point where you will just release,
Right. Wow.
and be free. And
Yeah.
what comes out of you when you're really just unafraid,
Right.
you know? And as you do that, it's like you'll produce a certain fruit, you know, you'll produce a certain sound, and honestly, it's like I think there's a difference between having self-awareness that you value some art or creativity from someone else, and then maybe glean from it, and maybe even implement like the way that art is created at some level, or maybe even mimic a sound at some level.
Right.
There's a great book called Steal Like an Artist, which kind of outlines the word origin, or original has the word origin in it. Like, there's nothing completely original. There is always an origin. Like, we're all connected to someone that came before us.
Right.
Wow.
And I think
Yeah.
there's an honoring of the past and gleaning from the things that influenced you and moved you, you know, that can be a helpful thing. But there needs to be this self-awareness of, I'm not just trying to copy that because that will work.
Right.
You know, it's more of like the respect and honor of, wow, that's beautiful. And man, as I begin to, you know, even as an exercise, I think one of the things they say in that book, Austin Kleon is a great writer, but or author, but he says, like, if you're stuck, like, go and write Radiohead's next song. Like, you know what they kind of sound like.
Yeah.
Like, get out of the box, and then as you do it, you'll write it a little differently.
Yeah.
You'll do, you know. But yeah, don't doubt that there's not enough creativity. Don't doubt that you can't do something that's unique,
Right.
you know, because at the end of the day, no one can walk exactly like me. No one talks like me, you know. Even when I try to steal something from someone, it's going to be different. So,
Right.
yeah, I think honoring the past, gleaning from the things that influence you, valuing those things, but then making sure that you don't put those things as your goal because you
Right.
think it'll work.
Oh, that's great. So you're a big advocate for creatives creating, right? Why is that important? Why is it important that creatives create what's inside of them? Like, I guess another way to say this is, what do you feel like the creative's role in society, or even in the kingdom, is?
I mean, we're surrounded by art. You know, I was in San Francisco airport. It's everywhere. The music's playing, you know. They've got artwork on the walls everywhere. Your sculptures everywhere. I mean, it like influence. It's like you can have the overt like creativity that people are consuming, but then you've got the indirect like things that are just always surrounding you. So it's like we inform. Art changes the world. Art actually informs government. Art informs what people value in the
Right.
world, you know. The lyrics carried in a song, like, you know, what would the Super Bowl be without pumping music? And what would, you know what I mean? Like, it's everywhere. So I think it's I'm kind of going in circles on this one, but I don't know if we need to judge it so hard of why we need to do it. We just know we want to. So isn't that, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
why am I attracted to a girl?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just am.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, it's like we're built that way.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that we want to create something is like evidence that we've been made by a creator that deposited that same DNA in us. And so I think the Lord, is waiting for an army of creatives to release their sound. And I think the value of creativity is that when someone gets to that point where they're unafraid and they're making the things that they're supposed to make, it stirs the heart of the Lord. Like he says, and I think it's in Isaiah, he says, like, as every voice begins to actually release a sound, it's like it stirs the heart like a man of war to respond on the earth. Wow. So I think we move the heart of God when we create to respond and impact the world. Wow. So yeah. And I mean, just on a surface level, I can't imagine if I didn't have certain albums or, if I didn't have color and art in my house. And so, yeah, it's so emotive, and so you can't put a pin on it, but it's so drastically important. So
for sure. Speaking about albums, you just released something iconic recently.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
One of the 20 that didn't know.
Stop. So, is it what platforms for our viewers? What platforms can they reach the music into?
Alan is the name of the band. Alan Music 222 on Instagram. You can follow us. I'm not, trying to go out and tour, and I don't have any, delusions of grandeur. I just want to create. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think as I do, and I'm in the mix, I can relate to other artists that are doing it, that are going through the same things, And I think there's a difference between coaching or leading artists and actually being releasing art. Mm-hmm. It's like putting your money where your mouth is, Mm-hmm. And so I love it. And Something Iconic was cool. Luke Randolph produced it, and he's part of the, creative bands that I've been in for the last 7 or 8 years. And it's amazing working with him, and had some co-writes with John Paul co-wrote on that, and Turner Burnett helped on that as well. But I love it.
That's awesome. So quick step back. You're from Texas. You moved here. Was your primary motive coming to writing? Was it for school, for BSSM?
Yeah, I played collegiate pro tennis, and got into the service industry, managing fitness spa athletic tennis clubs, and didn't think I was going to stay with the same company necessarily when I got in, but I did for 15 years. Wow. I was doing music and worship and songwriting and bands and stuff like that on the side. And then in 2010, I came up to do School of Worship, or 2009, came up to do School of Worship. And I had never really made a crazy pivot decision like that. I kind of let favor just lead me to the next thing. Right. But this was a transformational, at that point it was 3 weeks long, I think the school was. Right. But I was in a session, and I just knew I was gonna come. Wow. So ended up resigning from my position in SoCal at a resort there, and came up with my family, 4 kids at the time. Now I have 5. Yeah. Wow. And would never change a thing. It's been the most beautiful season. So
2009, School of Worship. And how did you get involved with Bethel Music?
So after my 2 years in school, I wanted to be an intern for Bethel Music, or for Jeremy Riddle. At the time, he was overseeing the worship community. And I just was like, every door I knocked on was kind of getting closed. I was friends with those guys. They knew who I was, but nothing was open. So the only thing that was open was to be a revival group pastor. Right. And I was like, man, just stick a knife in my eye. Like, I don't want to. My dad was a pastor. I vowed in the mirror when I was a kid, I'm never going to be a pastor. But anyway, there's a crazy supernatural story about how the Lord confirmed that. Absolute miracle of a story. Anyway, I got the confidence that I was supposed to do that. Anyway, I say that to say, those 3 years of thinking that was like dying to creativity, dying to any opportunity with something like Bethel Music, or just, pouring into creatives. It was the training ground, the foundational, crafting messages that I still speak about today
Right.
during those 3 years, and getting connected to Brian and Jen, and developing a rapport and a trust with them, and Joel Taylor, the CEO at the time. And then after 3 years of that, finally Bethel Music had grown,
Wow.
and the label had grown, and they needed someone in like an artist relations type of a role.
Mhm.
And so it was like it never would have been able to happen that way
Yeah.
had I not done the revival group pastoring. And
Wow.
so, yeah, and so I've been there almost 8 years now.
Wow. It's funny how that works. Usually the things that we say never to,
Yeah.
God tries to get funny with us. Like, oh, really? How about this? You know what I mean? So
So true.
how about Blackbox? How did that come to be?
So that was, I think it's 5 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
I was a part of Love Lounge years ago, which was similar but quite different. But it was, created an environment for people to come, and it was kind of more of an open mic type of a style. And it had, the leaders of that had moved away. It had kind of died out. And so I was just hungry for it. I just wanted to have something to do in Reading.
Right.
And so I had interns at the time still, and I was like, hey, what if we started to put this monthly, music event on? And at the time I called up Jacob Cook, who was a good friend, and was like, hey, do you want to MC these nights for me? This is my dream.
Phenomenal.
And he was like, are you kidding? Yesterday the Lord told me to serve something that Eric Allen was doing. I'm in. Like, he didn't even have to hear me talk for 5 minutes. And so that went on a really beautiful 3-year run with him. And so we vetted out the video auditions, and had a monthly event there, and we have had over 300 artists on the platform in those 5 years. Obviously COVID hit and made us have to adjust. But that's how that started. And then I took over what was previously Thunderbird Music Studio downtown.
Oh.
Dan McKenzie and that crew, they were leaving, and he called me up. He's like, man, I know you hinted at wanting a space. This will get taken quick. I'm going to tell you before anyone else knows. And connected to the leasing agent and just did a swap. And so I took over that space almost 4 years ago, I think now. And so that was like an actual physical space to cultivate, creatives and production. And so that's where Luke is. And so there was a studio that we developed. And so between the Fathering Artists, which also had, I'm constantly meeting with people, constantly meeting with artists and songwriters, because I'm involved in those things. They're attracted to me, so I'll have coffee, blah, blah, blah. So then I created Blackbox Sound Co, which sort of felt like an umbrella for that ecosystem. So you've got the live event platform, the songwriting retreats and artist development, and then the production, and it's like they each kind of feed each other.
Wow.
And so I'm still don't know fully what I'm doing, but I'm just planting seeds.
Wow.
and bearing the fruit that comes, and
Yeah.
I have a lot of dreams, a lot of vision for it,
Yeah.
and wanting to cultivate an environment where creatives can actually have a place and a platform and get poured into and have a community.
Yeah.
It's sort of similar to what you're doing, and you stick the magnet out there, and
Yeah.
they're gonna come, man.
For sure. You said something there that was so comforting for me. It was when you said, I still don't know what I'm doing. Because there's so many days where, to be honest, like, imposter syndrome is right around the corner at all times.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And there's times where, we're doing garden studios and there's people here and I'm talking, and there's a moment I'm talking, but in my head, I'm like, who do you think you are? What the heck are you doing? Do you know what I mean? What's your relationship with that? Is that a thing for you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, social media, Instagram, you hear this all the time. You see the highlights of people. You see the edits. You see the massaged version of whatever, right? But when you're doing it day in, day out, you guys, when you were dating, oh, he can do nothing wrong. She can do nothing wrong. And you're like, oh no, I got
to
a
this
laundry
day,
list.
Eric, to this day.
I have a laundry list of what he can do wrong. So I think, you know, when you begin to lead people, after a while, the facade of who you are starts to crumble if they're around you for too long.
Yeah.
You know, and we're all just people. And so I think finding your lane and staying in your lane and then getting help where you need it and being humble. I always want people that are as good as me or better than me around me. You know, not being afraid of greatness around you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just taking swings, man. You know, I think it's weird. Like anything that you do that you have to learn, right? Growing up, whether it's a sport, like I played a lot of sports on tennis, like you don't take your first tennis lesson and expect to be good. You know you're going to have to go through years of training and technique and strategy and fitness, right? But with leading people or creativity, it's like, oh man, as soon as I sing this note, it better be good or I'm going to be judged and pegged forever.
Yeah.
You know?
That's true.
It's like, no, sing until you get good. And the people that judged you that maybe you weren't good, sing until you get good. Lead until you become good.
Yeah.
Say something enough until you say it well. And we just oftentimes in creativity, there's not that grace. It doesn't feel like, you know, but you have to do it. Yeah. And I can tell you, so many people, dude. You take any artist that's made it, you can go and tack on 15 years, 20 years of ridicule, of doubting. Maybe they were terrible at first, you know. Right. But if you stick with it and you really want it, you'll get better. But yeah, I think to answer that, being willing to weather the storm of people's initial reactions. Yeah. Weather the storm of someone's initial judgment of you as a leader. Weather the storm of someone being disappointed in you. Weather the storm of you not saying it right. Like, I don't feel like I'm nailing it right now. Am I giving him what he wants? Oh, are these answers good? Like, oh,
you're doing
man,
great,
I know I've been dropping fire before, and like, I don't give me a good question, Dan. You know, but who cares, man? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I love this example. I give this a lot at Fathering Artists, or, you know, when we have the retreats. I oftentimes share this, but you know, in baseball, you get on the best batters in the world, get on base 3 times out of 10. Yeah. You know, and they go to the dugout 7 out of 10. Yeah. You know, man, if we could have that mindset as a creative, oh, my goal is to fail 7 times out of 10. Yeah, that would change your life.
100%.
Yeah.
Do that as a leader. Do that as a speaker. Oh man, I want to fail because the fact is if you just do it 10 times and you don't quit and do it again 10 times and do it again 10 times, you're gonna get there. So
yeah, that's beautiful. So Fathering Artists has been going on for 10 years. If you could meet Eric Allen from 10 years ago, who's just about to start, what would you tell him?
Be more decisive. Risk even more.
Yeah. Wow.
Adjust, don't measure. Adjust, don't measure. Like, be more attentive to just adjusting to God's voice. Don't measure every step of the way. Yeah. You know? Those are top of mind. And then also I think get help. Like really seek out help earlier. Recognize your weaknesses. Be super honest with yourself. You know? Don't avoid pain. I'm a 7 too, so I've learned to embrace pain. I actually love pain now.
Wow. Pain's
an indicator of I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, those are the top of mine.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to move on to our next segment. We have a couple viewer questions here. So the first one is from Greg. He's gone to a couple of Fathering Artist events. And his question is, where is that? So here it is. He says, in a collab situation, how do you get to the beautiful, delicate places, the relational places, and keep the professional edge?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I think that's something that we at Bethel Music, overseeing all of our artists who are our songwriters and our staff writers, the organic, right, meets the dedication of just being a creative professional, and there's a beautiful collision. And sometimes I feel like oftentimes people are either on one side or the other of that. And as you keep doing it, they're on a trajectory to collide.
Yeah.
And if you just don't quit, they'll collide. Meaning, there's some people that just like they're professional, they're rigid, and they don't know how to just like connect relational. And then there's the other people that are waiting for the organic relationship before they, get to that point where they share their creativity. So I think it's a hard, man, that's a hard one. I think over time, also just being able to call a spade of like, man, I don't feel like I gel with this person. You don't have to be friends with every person to be a Christian.
Right.
You need to be kind.
Yeah.
But who you spend your time with and who you decide to write with, staying professional. I mean, I don't know if that's the word I would choose. I think it's like having tact, having maturity, and being able to have relational skills is important.
Yeah.
You want to be that writer that everyone wants to write with. How do you do that? You're an encourager. You have an awareness of the room. You've got a demeanor that is something that cultivates someone wanting to open up and try things, So I would focus on that. I'm not sure if I'm hitting that question, but if you're creating with someone and you start to really like get heart connects and friendship and all those things, and then all of a sudden maybe splits happen and there's a discrepancy on who wrote, like, I don't know if that's what Greg was going after.
Right.
But I think just clear communication in those scenarios.
Yeah.
Where, man, we're such good friends, but then all of a sudden we want to release a song, and I think I wrote all of it and you didn't do anything. Then all of a sudden that professional relationship. So
right.
If that's the angle that he's coming from, I get that. I'm talking in a circle here, so hopefully I'll nail it at some point. But
no, this is good.
Yeah, you got to do those things, I think, early on, having direct conversations about how you want to do the splits and then get that out of the way. You know?
Okay, this is not one of the questions, but what does that look like, by the way, those splits? Because I've never been in a professional songwriting circle. How does that get worked out? Like, okay, like I think I wrote most of the bridge and the chorus. I think it's 50 me, 25 you, 20. What does that look like?
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, this is something I get asked a lot. I think there's two kind of main ways. It's kind of contribution based. A song's broken down into two main halves. Okay. Melody and lyric. That's the composition of a song, is melody and lyric. If someone comes up and just plays guitar on the song, unless you've had a conversation where you're like, hey, we're all gonna just get even splits, because that's the other half, is just deciding if we're gonna write together, we're just gonna do even splits. Doesn't matter if you come up with more melody ideas today, tomorrow I might.
Right.
And that's the way Nashville does it, is just pretty much it's known that it's going to be even splits. For years, Bethel Music was more contribution based, because we were just learning, and no one, the songs would be taken from one group to another group or to another person, and so they would kind of keep track and voice memos and sort of look at the melody and lyric and divide it up on a percentage.
Yeah.
But now pretty much anytime it's even splits.
Wow. Even in this in this environment.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, and you just oftentimes, if you're in a professional setting where people are doing that day in, day out with publishers and things like that, they just know.
Right.
Unless you bring an idea where, if someone brings an idea that you feel like is like 80% there and all you need is like a bridge or something, well, then you need to communicate that.
Right.
Hey guys, I feel like this thing is about 80% done.
Yeah.
Would you mind helping me finish it?
Right.
Gotcha. And then at that point, you would do a contribution-based split.
Gotcha. So it's different per situation.
Yeah.
But if nothing's spoken of, then it's probably even.
Yeah, especially if you just come into a writing session where there's a group of 3 of you or 4 of you, it's going to be even splits. Where there might be the contribution would be if 4 people, this happens all the time too, say 4 of our writers submit a song, it's going to get placed on an album, and in that process, someone like a Brian comes in, and in order to get that 20% better to make the album, he tweaks something and adds lyrics and then he comes in, maybe he'll go. And Brian and Jen and anyone in our world that I've ever seen have been way on the generous side of giving away more and taking less. Yeah. And so in a situation like that, though, it might happen where Brian might come in and finish off a song and take 5%.
Wow.
Or 10% or something.
Wow.
Wow.
That's awesome. Now, our last question is from Catherine D. from Reading. And her question is, how do you find your people?
What kind of people?
She didn't say. Like
creative people?
Let's talk in basis, just for my sake, let's talk about your team. How did you find your team?
With like Blackbox stuff and fathering artists?
Yeah.
I think foundationally for me, I want someone that gets what I'm doing. I would rather have someone that is just 2 feet in than someone that has a lot of skills and just is in it for what they could get. Or just, you know what I mean?
Right, it's loyalty, hey.
So I think it's just like, man, I love what you're doing, and I just want to be a part of it, even if it's for a year interning. I had an intern at one point, or someone that had applied for me, and she came up to me, and we were just chatting about it, and at one point I was like, why do you want to intern for me? And she's like, it was such an honest answer, and I loved it. It actually what moved my heart. She goes, honestly, I can't even answer that. I just know that I would want to clean your toilets or something like that. And I'm like, oh, for goodness sakes, you're never going to clean my toilet. But it was that heart. It was like, I just want to be around what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so that's primary. Secondary is like, do you have skill sets in the things that I actually need?
Right.
To move the needle of this company down the road or,
for sure.
or, this vision down the road. And so I think, finding the right pieces of personality is important too. How do you build trust? Trust is huge. Can I really trust you? And I think getting people that understand where the boundary is of what it feels like to want to be around something that moves their heart without, it's this weird dynamic of almost having this sense of ownership, but then also knowing where your influence, what your contribution is and what it shouldn't be. And I think that's, for me and Brian and Jen, I'm not trying to be the founder of Bethel Music. I have a deep sense of ownership of what we're doing.
Right.
And I'm contributing as a teammate in that regard, in that mindset.
Right.
But if I try, it's like Lucifer, man.
Oh.
It's that spirit of, I love it, but I want it to be mine.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a season where you might be leading a movement, and there's a season where you might be supporting a movement.
Right.
And if I'm in both of those right now. I'm in a role of supporting a movement, and I'm in the role of leading a movement.
Right.
And I need people around me that are not trying to lead my movement. So there's also people that I have it closer in that inner circle that are teammates with me, like deep core, like partners. And those guys are going to be usually lifers, man, that I've really built trust with. And so I don't know if that helped.
That helps a lot.
That was actually super practical, and talking about some key points to look out for, which was great. Before we end this podcast, we usually do a challenge at the end.
Cool.
And so today we're going to be doing the 1 minute portrait.
Okay.
So we're going to have, okay, let me hand this out real quick. You ever draw? You ever sketch?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I draw a mean pair of leather boots. No, I'm just kidding.
So these aren't supposed to be good. These are supposed to be silly. So Mattel has a timer there. Eric, why don't you draw me?
Oh my gosh, for real? Are you kidding?
There you go. And then babe, I'll draw
Holy
you, and then you
smokes.
draw Eric. And after, we'll just present to the camera. You guys can present to this camera. I'll present to that one. And we'll probably post it on social media and just do a vote which one the viewers' favorites are. So, babe, why don't you start the timer?
Yep, started.
Oh, we're starting. Okay, that was
Yep.
fast. Okay, there we go. Okay, babe, stop moving, baby. You're moving too much, babe. Okay. Oh gosh. Okay. Get that smile.
Oh!
How much time we got left, baby?
38 seconds.
Ah! Okay, don't think too much now. Oh gosh. I got 22 seconds. Oh my gosh, baby, I'm so sorry. You do not look like this.
I'm doing so bad right
Oh
now.
my
God, I just
gosh.
messed up.
Baby, you don't look like this, I promise. You look so much better. Oh my gosh.
You got 6 seconds.
You look like you need deliverance in this photo. Okay.
Oh, time. Oh my God.
Is it time?
Yeah.
Beautiful, time. Alright guys, that's it.
I'm so sorry.
Alright, okay, Eric. Hold on. Okay, Eric, why don't you show us your beautiful creation?
Oh my gosh, where do I point it?
Right here.
Bam.
Beautiful. I like how you made my beard more full. I actually would like one more full, so I appreciate that. That's beautiful.
That looks like somebody I know.
Yeah. Okay, let's see yours, baby.
Mine is so bad. I laugh.
Oh,
You don't look like
right, no, that looks like
it's not finished.
Hey, no, my hair's about that thin.
the glasses. Wow, babe. Cool.
I tried. I laughed and then
That's
Nice.
good.
I don't draw,
Okay,
so.
babe, you don't look like this, okay? You don't look like this. Okay, so this looks like you ever seen those shrunken heads?
Why
They
do I
have
look
some
like
of
a
those
monkey?
shrunken heads in Australia. So this would be you if you needed deliverance.
Oh
But
my God.
thank you, Jesus, you've been
man.
delivered. Well, Eric, thank you so much for swinging by. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you for pouring out your knowledge and your wisdom. We really appreciate it. So, guys, to our viewers, make sure you check out Something Iconics on Spotify, any platform.
Spotify, Apple Music, all the DSPs, yeah.
Beautiful. And if you're a songwriter out there and you want an impartation, if you want to go to the next level in your songwriting, prayerfully consider signing up to Father and Artist. Completely changed my life. I'm sure it'll change yours. Where can they sign up, Eric?
On fathering_artists on IG, applications are in the bio. You can fill out the application, send in a video audition. We do have a few spaces left for the November one. We'll also be doing one in the spring. Would love to have you guys out.
Beautiful. Well, with that being said, thank you guys for watching, toodles.
Not just decoration. We are transformation. In the beginning was a garden.
This is Garden Studios. Welcome home.